And welcome once again to another episode of the HoriZone Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and you can find me on Twitter at Bob McDonald. Jimmy Lemke, my co-host, will be forthcoming. As I understand it, he's going to jump in the Stone Cold Steve Austin entrance music, so I'm looking forward to that. You can find him on Twitter at PantherU, and you can follow us on Twitter at HoriZoneRT. So, big couple of episodes here coming up. As we did in April with the Fan Battle Royale, we are doing the same thing this fall. And as with what we did in April, we've got representatives from Horizon League schools. Some of them are here now. I'm assuming some of the other ones will be forthcoming as we chat along. So let me go ahead and get started with all the introductions. I'm going to do this in alphabetical order. Sorry, Ricky. Starting with John Durder over at Cleveland State.
Go Vikes.
Happy to have your audio working this time.
Yeah, hopefully clear too.
Yo, as a bell. Yes. All right, next up, new face here, Green Bay. Jim, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm a Green Bay graduate, former athlete, season ticket holder, and happy to be here.
All right. Another new face to this forum, but somebody we've had on the show in the past, Chris Schutte from representing IUPUI.
Hello, happy to be here.
All right. And a familiar voice, I'm sure, to of the HoriZone Roundtable, representing Oakland, Matt Dudek.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
All right, and last but not least, Ricky Redinger over at Wright State.
You made me last, but I just wanted to remind everybody that we did win the league last year.
Yes, but we do.
Ricky Redinger, Wright State grad, former club football player, and excited to be back here.
All right. So eventually, and as I mentioned, we will eventually be. The hope is to eventually have the folks, representatives from Northern Kentucky and UIC, and of course, Detroit Mercy jumping on as soon as they can. And as I mentioned, I'm sure Jimmy will be jumping on here at some point in time. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, the first subject is, I'm sure you all read the other day that the Horizon League has decided that the Horizon League has apparently put out a bidding process for the tournament from this point forward. So for like the next 3 years, 2020 to 2022. So one of the things that I guess, to replace Detroit. So I guess my question is that, and I'm still leaning towards Indianapolis eventually being the host school, but what do you guys think? Do you think that there's some dark horse candidate for tourney host that might come on in at the last minute?
I don't know. I still feel like the best option for the league is going back to campus sites. I mean, you get more attendance. There's more fans for each school. I feel like the league's trying to fit a square peg into a round hole with this whole doing a neutral site tournament. I mean, we saw in Detroit, it doesn't work. Fans didn't show up from Detroit. Fans didn't show up from other schools. They had to give tickets away to make it look half full. And I think we just go back to campus sites.
I think of Motor City Madness. I went to 2 of the 3 Motor City Madnesses in person. The one I missed was because I had a child that was born 2 days before it. And for there, I'm of the belief that it's not the neutral site, it's the format. I mean, when they were going Thursday to Tuesday or Friday to Tuesday, nobody in their right mind is going to Detroit for 4 days, 3 days off of work to see Horizon League basketball. I think a better format, and then you have an opportunity with a neutral site to maybe make it work.
My 2 cents on it, and I said this when it first started, is campus sites up until the semifinals and the finals at a neutral site.
Okay.
One of the things I struggle with, as I say, what I struggle with in that format a little bit is the pre-planning idea that a fan is going to have to wait until a week before to decide, okay, I'm going to get in my car, book a flight, or book a series of hotels to then show up in Detroit or Indianapolis or Toledo or wherever the game's going to be. The neutral site, and what makes it work is I know today when the games would be and where they'd be. I could plan today if I wanted to.
So what do you? I guess I should also ask, what do you guys think of the new tournament format in which seeds 9 and 10 don't even get to play in any games in the tournament?
I think it makes the most sense. I mean, you have a
Really?
straight up bracket 1, 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5, and I think it makes the most sense. I hated the whole concept of trying to protect the 1 seed and then the 1 seed lose every year and we change it. Just leave it as a standard bracket.
See, I disagree with that because, and maybe it's because for the last couple of years, the top seed has in fact not made it to the tournament and not won the conference tournament. But I'm not really sold on the whole. I'm not really sold on the whole format in and of itself, mostly because of the fact that it seems like it's kind of put together at the last minute. I mean, I'm still kind of struggling to understand at least that part.
In the old format, I look back and of the 11 years of the highest seed hosting it, the number 1 seed won 7 times. The lowest seed to win was Milwaukee as a 5 seed at Wright State. In the last 3 years at Motor City Madness, when they went out of their way to protect Valparaiso a couple times, the number 1 seed won 0 times. So, it could be that the quality of the league has gotten a little bit more where there's not a big dog anymore. Like in that old format, you had Butler and you had Milwaukee as top 25 teams, and they won it many times. So I don't know if it's the format needs to, leave the bottom teams out or leave them in. It just seems that there's not a clear-cut best team in the league that can win every game every time like those old Butler or Milwaukee teams.
Well, see, one of the other things that Jimmy and I had discussed one of our previous episodes when the Motor City Madness announcement came out is one of the things that we did see is I just had to remember is that when because that double bye format kind of disappeared. It looks like it disappeared somewhere, after Motor City Madness started. Probably, I don't know, not sure if it was last year or this year, where there wasn't a double bye for the 1 seed like there had been from about 2002 on. And
Bob, the 17 tournament was the first where they got rid of the double bye.
Yeah, and of course, see, this is where and I didn't remember that. I didn't remember that during the episode. This is why we need a correction guy. It's like, hey, you screwed something up. But one of the things that we did see, though, one of the things that we did come across that during the double bye format is that, in spite of the fact that there were times where the top seed didn't win the tournament, it was always clear that the best team coming out of the league at that moment in time was coming in, and it also kind of maximized the opportunity to potentially win tournament games. And I looked at this because from like 2002 to about 2011, a HoriZone League team had won a tournament game every single one of those years. And again, it wasn't always the 1 seed. It wasn't always Butler. You had like a 2009 when Cleveland State wins a game.
Milwaukee in 2005.
Yeah, exactly. And so it seemed and also too, and this is also something we also mentioned, is the fact that because those were on neutral sites, that was also, I guess that was also not a neutral site. It was actually on campuses. But I understand the point of having the neutral site tournament where again, the point is to be able to actually be able to know, hey, this is where the tournament's going to be. And, this is where the tournament's going to be. It's not going to change at the last minute or anything like that. But which is what they've done the last couple of years. Has it worked out in terms of being able to get maximizing their ability to win NCAA tournament games? No, because no team since that has won Motor City Madness has won a NCAA tournament game.
But I don't think that has anything to do with Motor City Madness. That tells you how far the league has fallen in the past 5, 6. You're talking about all these wins, and we're talking at least 5+ years ago since the Horizon League did anything. That has nothing to do with the tournament.
I agree entirely with that comment, because if you look at the last 4 years of the on-site tournament, you had 3 Valparaiso hosting years, you had 1 Green Bay year, and in that time period, you ended up having Detroit, Valpo, UWM, and Valpo winning, and they averaged in the NCAA tournament a 14.33 seed in that, or excuse me, a 14.25 seed in that time period. And in the Motor City Madness, we've had a 14, a 15, and a 14. So it's the quality of the league. It's not the format, in my opinion, because we're not getting better or worse teams or seeding in the NCAA tournament under the Motor City Madness versus the last 4 years of post-Butler old neutral or on-campus sites.
So when you look at that, to your point, so when you look at that, then the question then becomes with regards to this whole neutral site idea. Is it a matter of trying to? I mean, I guess the question that I have is are we at a point now where the quality of the league is, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of have we hit bottom yet? I'm not there yet, but the question is now is. I guess my question is, is it with the neutral site? Is it, what's the hope to accomplish? What is the league's hope to accomplish in Horizon League tournaments 2020 and on?
Well, I think what people forget when they whine about Motor City Madness because it was changed, nobody likes change. What they forget is Olympia was paying schools to be there.
Yes, they were.
And so you're not getting that anywhere else. And I think that's part of what they're looking for is anybody willing to pay the Horizon to bring our mediocre at best basketball in right now. And at the time, Detroit was. So we can whine about it all we want, but at the end of the day, schools are at least making something to be there, which is not what you got anywhere else.
Okay. Something else that goes with that, as I say, the old athletic director at Green Bay, Mary Ellen Gillespie, told me a big part of it, and you saw it in the announcement this week, student athlete experience. It's less time out of class, easier to plan for, and overall they were doing other community service things leading into Motor City Madness. It was trying to create a better experience for the student athletes than the last time they had it at Valparaiso. Green Bay sat in a hotel for 3 nights in Valparaiso, Indiana, and you can imagine that did not go very well for them. That's not a student athlete experience.
As someone whose in-laws live in Valparaiso, well, I mean, I know what to do over there, but I'm sure no student athlete does. So I'm sure.
They can't drink, and that's all there is to do in Valpo.
Yeah, pretty much. No real argument there. So with that said, and I get that, and I understand kind of that aspect of it. So where does it? And understand the experience for the student athlete. That's obviously paramount. That has kind of been the paramount, kind of mission of the Horizon League since its inception, and But where does that leave? Not to kind of downplay that, but where does that leave us as the fans, though? Exactly.
As fans, it leaves us out of luck because they insist on using a format that seems most friendly to ESPN or the host venue, in this case, in the past, Little Caesars Arena or the Joe Louis Arena. The fans seem to be third on that priority list, which I thought was interesting. The announcement that came out this week, it was about attendance, community engagement, and student athlete experience. And okay, student athlete experience, I can see that. Sure. Attendance with the format, I just don't see it. I'm hard pressed to believe that no matter where you put this thing, people are coming out on a Tuesday night in March to see Horizon League basketball unless they have a vested interest in it.
Well, I think there's a bigger issue there. You look at all the schools in the league and how many schools actually have any semblance of a fan base that's going to travel. Maybe Milwaukee, maybe Oakland. I mean, Cleveland State, Detroit, sure as hell not. UIC, no. I mean, That's why I say campus sites are the best, because you just don't have fan bases that are going to travel. Put it on campus sites, at least you're going to have the home fans there. That's how I look at it.
I can tell you that Oakland does travel. Absolutely. We did it for the Summit League out to Dakotas.
I will also say that you kind of run you do that, but you also kind of run the risk that in spite that it is a conference tournament. Ultimately, it's going to be kind of locally how the host school is going to handle the attendance issue, and that's hit and miss too, as you know, John. So, So now that we've talked all of that, and so I guess my other question then becomes, have in fact we hit bottom? Last year was not a good year for the HoriZone League.
Hey, Bob, before we go.
I hope last year was rock bottom, because as I'm looking at the blue ribbon preview for the conference, we were 26th out of 32 conferences in RPI, and that's by far the worst we've been in the past 10 years. So if this is not rock bottom, I don't want to see what it is.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Jim, what was that?
I was gonna, before you move on to rock bottom, I just wanted to comment on one thing on the new venue seeking a new venue. I know a lot of people talking about, neutral site versus campus site. The reality for the league is we're going neutral site. So, we're gonna have to wait a couple of years to bring that topic back up. I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter that had Indianapolis as kind of the logical spot for this thing. If my information is correct, I think that Bankers Life Fieldhouse is utilized in 2020 and 2022 for the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
And inside the announcement they had this week was, geographic footprint, and the 10-member university's home venue cannot host the tournament. That's what they had in the announcement. So where does that really leave the league looking? And, I think there's lots of different places they could go. But I just think that this foregone conclusion, if we're going to do it, it's going to be in Indianapolis. I'm not sure that that's necessarily going to happen if Bankers Life isn't available. I don't know where they host the games. I mean, it'd be awesome to have it at Hinkle.
Well, what about an IUPUI's home arena? I mean, isn't that brand new?
If that's an automatic disqualifier, because it's Farmers Bureau is IUPUI's home. So that's an automatic disqualifier based on what Jim mentioned. It's in the bid process, at least what the HoriZone had on their website said, that member venues are excluded. Essentially, it's going to have to be a neutral arena, even if it's in a city that is a host to a HoriZone League member. So Fiserv Forum would work, UWM Panther Arena wouldn't. Bankers Life Fieldhouse would work, whatever they call that arena on the State Fairgrounds in Indianapolis wouldn't. So, yeah. So with that said, you're probably talking about, like maybe, like for example, UIC Arena would not qualify, but Rosemont HoriZone, or whatever the hell they're calling it these days.
Rosemont would work. The new DePaul Arena would work. The United Center would work, but UIC Pavilion wouldn't work.
Okay, and Cleveland State Wolfstein Center wouldn't work, but the Q would work.
Well,
that's not going to happen because the Q falls over themselves to host the MAC tournament. So,
I mean, if we're being honest, though, I mean, I think we have to have to be realistic and throw out the idea of the HoriZone League tournament ever being at an arena the size of Quicken Loans Arena or Little Caesars or the United Center. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, sorry,
it's going to be at an arena. I think it's going to be an arena that size. You see the Atlantic 10 draping off the upper levels of their arena. You see the Scott Trade Center or Enterprise Center in St. Louis for Arch Madness. I mean, it's going to happen. Whether they can fill it or not, that's probably never going to happen. But the idea of it happening in a big building, that's probably going to happen.
It needs to happen. I don't know why we think that we're under the MAC. We just said the MAC uses Quicken Loan or the Q or whatever you guys call it out there. Like, why wouldn't we have those same expectations?
Because the MAC fans travel way better than the HoriZone League fans. Way better. It's not even close.
Well, we need to do better.
I was going to say something in the MAC. You see, Cleveland is a really good point for where the best fan bases are in the MAC. You've got Akron, you've got Ohio, you've got Toledo. They're doing the most traveling for the whatever they call that. What do they call that? Rock and roll.
MAC Madness.
MAC Madness, yeah.
Well, you've got 5 MAC teams in Ohio. That helps.
Yep.
Yeah.
Two of which happen to be within an hour drive. Kent State and Akron. Yeah. Not to mention
Toledo's an hour and a half.
Not to mention if you throw a stone in downtown Cleveland, you're going to hit a graduate of a MAC school. Can't tell you how many Ohio U graduates are working downtown right now, who are very interested in attending the conference basketball tournament there. Not to mention also too, and let's not forget also that the MAC also had, Cleveland is the headquarters for the MAC. The MAC conference, it's conference headquarters. So there's that too. Which is why I initially, given that the HoriZone League is based in Indianapolis, that's kind of where I led. That's my conclusion, where I led to that. But that actually, and the other part of it is too, and this kind of ties into has the league at the bottom part. MAC's RPI as a conference is infinitely better and has been infinitely better than the HoriZone Leagues over the last couple of years. It has, and that's there's no two ways around it. So that circles me back to the initial question of where are we looking at are we looking at a repeat of last year where it's going to be it's going to be horrible? Was last year bottom is my question. Well, are we finally getting to a point where we're seeing improvements?
I think you're going to have a very similar year to last year. I mean, I'm looking up and down the projected standings, and Wright State and Northern Kentucky are your top 2 teams again. They have UIC projected 3rd, but they lost Ty Odiasi and Dikembe Dixon. So how good are they really going to be?
I disagree, but thanks for sharing. I think they probably got one of the better backcourts in the conference.
I think it'll just be similar to last year. That's what I think.
I see the league improving from last year. I mean, I think Green Bay, I think UIC. I mean, UIC didn't do anything in the non-conference portion of their schedule.
No, not at all. They were horrible.
They were horrible. IUPUI wasn't very good in the non-conference. I think they're going to have a better team than expected. I mean, you're only kind of looking at maybe 2 teams, maybe 3 that are still bottoming out. I think everybody else is still trending up from there.
I like one question I did have, and I actually posed this to both you, Chris, and you, Jim. Both IUPUI and Green Bay. Green Bay I thought was just a down year last year. Do either of you consider those 2 teams kind of the sleepers in the league? Because it seems to me like those 2 schools to me seem like the type of schools that could sneak up on some folks, even though if you kind of dig into it, maybe not necessarily it shouldn't necessarily be a surprise.
Chris, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm kind of biased in this sense, and that I'm a graduate of IUPUI and I've worked closely with the program, so I'm gonna be a little biased, but I do think they have some pieces there that can really make a difference. I mean, you look at a guy like Cameron Justice, who I think is probably going to be one of the better shooters in the league. He's former highly rated recruit coming from Vanderbilt. The thing with IUPUI is they're starting to get in like the correct type of players that they need to compete in the HoriZone League. When you make a quick transition from the Summit League to the HoriZone League, I mean, it's just a different type of play style. It's a different type of athlete game, speed of the game. I do think that they can maybe be a little bit of a sleeper. I'm not sure if they're going to be good enough to win the league, but I mean, you saw last year I think they were projected to finish last going into the season. I think that part of it could have been just, hey, it's new kid on the block. We don't really know what they're bringing. I think that they're probably a middle of the pack team, but a couple things break right. They get hot at the right time. I wouldn't be shocked to see them crack the top 4.
I agree with Chris entirely for IUPUI. In my preseason picks, I got them 5th and possibly higher. I really like what they've done, and that kills me to say that because I was anti-IUPUI. I felt like they did nothing to deserve the opportunity to be in the league. But now that they're here, I think they have a decent team, if not better than decent. On the Green Bay front, I really feel like, and Coach Darner had said this earlier this summer. If you look at his record, year 4, he's won his league every time. He's in year 4 at Green Bay. He's got his guys in there. But on top of that, not only does he have his guys, he's got a couple of pieces that are really solid. You look at a Sandy Cohen, who was a top recruit, probably one of the 3 best players in the league. If they win a bunch of games, might be the player of the league. You see Cam Hankerson, who is very athletic, has some range on his jump shot, taking a big step. They're getting a player named Cody Schwartz, who was a San Jose State transfer, local kid from Green Bay, 6'8", can shoot from well behind the 3-point line. I'm pretty confident that he will make a solid impact. He was a 7-point per game scorer in the Mountain West as a freshman. And then, Jaquan McLeod is a guy who did well at Milwaukee until he hurt himself and then had some personal things and he left the program. He's back and he's kind of a scoring machine. So you get any lift of their freshmen, of which they had 5 last year. You take Cohen, Schwartz, Hankerson, McLeod. I have them second in the league. I know I'm biased, but I really think that they're trending in the right direction and are going to play much more of that RP40 style than they were able to play last year, where they weren't really pressuring up and down as much. I mean, they got a lot of shots up, but they definitely weren't playing the same way that they played when they had Jordan Faust and Carrington Love when Darner was in his first year with Green Bay. And I feel like this roster, much more than anything that Darner's had in the last 2 years, is going to be more reflective of his style and his ability to win games.
All right. So looking at the bottom of the kind of piggybacking off that, looking at the bottom half of the conference potentially. And no, I also dispute the idea that I also am, and maybe it's because I'm an Uber homer and whatever, but I don't think Cleveland State's going to end up in the bottom half of this league this year, but that's just me. The wild card in this, I think, and I don't know what to, Matt. I don't know what to make. What do you make of what's going on with Oakland right now?
I think that's kind of the fun thing is no one's really sure, and that's why everyone's kind of picked on mid to lower. We've lost a ton, obviously. I mean, the only returning starter is Neely. Although we all know all that, we've seen all that. But what I don't think people realize, or you have to remember, is that they lost a lot to injury last year. I mean, we were playing without Brad Brechting all season, which I'm not saying that Brad Brechting would have made the season, but he probably would have been the 6'11" dude that we could have put in the middle there. It was constant injuries. Even a lot of people on the floor were hurt. Nunn was hurt. Brock was hurt. But at the same time, almost all those guys are gone. I mean, Brock went Div 2 on us, like, out of nowhere. But you know what? If you're going to quit on your team, it is what it is. But it's a different story.
That is such a weird situation to me, by the way, that Isaiah Brock would all of a sudden just transfer to a D2 team.
He quit last year, too. He quit twice on his team. Like, okay, see ya. Like, I mean, thanks for what you did. You were a good player, but clearly it wasn't for you. See ya. Like, but what it comes down to is the team is young. I mean, I think they've got one senior, if I'm remembering off the top of my head, and that's Jordan Nobles, who transferred from Eastern Michigan to do a grad year. But other than that, it's a really young team. I think we're going to play bigger than we usually do, which is not a campy thing typically. But what I like about it is that's what we've been losing to. You look at like Wright State and Northern Kentucky, when they've been doing well, they're not shooting the lights out. They're grinding games out, and I think that's where OU's gotten hurt in the past. We've had so many weapons that go cold at the wrong times. So I'm excited personally about the idea of watching, Xavier Hill-Mays grind it out down low. We have a 7-foot freshman, Babatunde. I don't even know how to say his name. I'm going to screw this up. Babatunde Sewunde.
Oh, that's on Twitter. So I better learn how to pronounce his name real quick.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear Neil Rule say that a couple times so that I can figure out how it's said. But I mean, the dude is a monster. He's still learning the game, but I mean, he's a monster of a person. We've got a lot of winners, which is good. But they're all young. So I think we're going to start slow, and everyone's going to count us out. And I think they're going to make more noise than people realize when it matters.
Matt, I got a question for you. Do you think that they're going to might perform a little bit better than expected, given that they just won't have the expectations that they had last year?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm so glad to have a team that no one's talking about.
Right.
We needed it.
I mean, last year, just coming from our I think in our preseason poll we had him rated top 10 because you looked at that roster and you've got Nunn, Hayes, and Martez Walker. That's a ton of talent. I agree that I think having lower expectations with a group of younger guys that you can kind of just get your feet wet early on in the season and maybe
everyone's going to forget about
things.
Yeah. Everyone's going to forget about and ignore them, and that's exactly what they need early season. But again, if you look, especially a lot of these freshmen, these kids are winners. They come from winning programs. Maddox, who's out of Novi in Michigan, he hit 2 game-winning shots to get his team to the Div 1 finals. I mean, that's a gamer. And these kids can play, but they're going to need a little time to adjust, and everyone's going to forget about them until late. And I think that's actually a good thing for the league. I feel like that's what we've been losing to. So I feel like it's kind of our turn, which is a change for us.
Hey, Matt, can I ask a question for you about Oakland?
Sure.
In the 5 years that Oakland's been in the league, they have the second best conference record. Obviously, they don't have anything to show for that in terms of NCAA appearances. I mean, when I see a young team, is Campy capable of coaching these guys up? I mean, I almost feel like he's held them down a little bit with the talent that they've had in the last couple of years.
I think he is, and actually, I think he's better with the younger players. I think that's some of what taught him. Is he doesn't? I mean, he gets along well with these players, but like, how much coaching is he really giving to Kendrick Nunn, who just came out of Illinois? And I mean, other than he provides a father figure to someone like Nunn or Walker, who got themselves in trouble and all that. And he made sure that they got their lives together, which is awesome. They went on. They were choir boys when they were here. I was talking about this with somebody on Twitter the other day. They did their job when they were here. They didn't get in any trouble, and they played basketball. But I don't know how much coaching up he was able to do. And then last year, I mean, it just came down to injuries. I mean, we lost every piece of it you could imagine. Everybody was either hurt or out. And I mean, it is what it is. That's part of the game. But I think that was a bigger factor than anything. But I think Campy will do a really nice job with the younger players. I think that's where he excels. And I think his assistant coaching staff is built for that.
All right. So switching from the bottom to the top. So Ricky, what does, as the defending conference tournament champions and finishing second in the regular season, what is it going to take for Wright State to repeat? What's it going to take for them to, what tool, what is it going to take for them to kind of repeat as champions?
I think they're going to need to find that score. They had Grant Benzinger last year was kind of the guy that when things got rough, they put the ball in his hands. Will the Bill Wampler, who transferred from Drake, or Cole Gentry, who played some limited minutes last year, was able to play the second half of the season after transferring in from South Dakota State, will they be able to step into that role? I know one guy I was really looking forward to maybe stepping into that role was Everett Winchester, and then he transferred to Florida Atlantic. But you still got Loudon Love down low. He's going to get his double-doubles. So really, I think it just comes down to finding a guard who's capable of scoring that 20, 25 a night and being able to let the defense kind of do their work.
So, John, I've waxed poetic on Cleveland State enough over episodes, and this is my show. So, where do you come out on the Vikings?
Well, for me, I mean, it kind of sounds like IUPUI. I mean, Cleveland State, once again, it seems like every year with them, there's a lot of turnover going on, and that, that's lose 3 starters from last year, have some guys transfer out, seems to always happen. But I feel like there's a lot of true talent coming in. You look at Rashad Williams out of Detroit. I mean, I think he once made McDonald's All-American status late last year. And then you got a guy like Deontay Spider Johnson, guy in the inside in the paint that can be a true rim protector, shot blocker. And then, you got Appleby, who I think is one of the best guards in the conference, returning Stefan Kenich. He can further his game. And I don't know. I mean, it'll definitely be a young team. I think the non-conference and the first part of the conference season will be pretty rough for Cleveland State. Just hope whether they end this year like they did last year, with the bang, getting better as the year goes along. I'm not really sure what to expect. I'd say middle of the pack if I'm realistic.
Okay. All right.
for Bob and John.
Yeah.
Quick question for you guys.
Yeah.
You look back a year ago, Felton gets hired. There's really not a lot of buzz around the league. I mean, how do you guys feel looking back? Youngstown got a lot of attention with Calhoun getting hired. You guys hire a retread, and from where I sit, Felton looks like the better hire. What do you guys think about that?
You know what? I gotta say, I was definitely not on board with Dennis Felton. I will be the first person to mention that and first person to admit that. I know I've done that multiple times. That said, and I'm not just saying this because we had him on the show, but when you look at what Cleveland State did last year, I mean, you had a situation where if a couple of buckets kind of go their way, they're actually a 500 ball club last year. So it wasn't really that big a surprise to me that they did what they did in the conference tournament, because you knew that they had the capability of hanging with anybody in the league. They had the ability to do so. Well, maybe not necessarily Northern Kentucky, because they got owned by Northern Kentucky, in both games during the regular season. That one was kind of a surprise. But when you look at the other team in that they played during the conference tournament, you look at Youngstown State, where they split the series with them. Wright State, even during the championship game, I was, because you got to remember, Cleveland State beat Wright State in the regular season, which probably shocked the hell out of everybody. And when they beat Oakland, they hung with Oakland in at least one of their games during the regular season. So it wasn't really that big a surprise to me. And he was doing that too. And this was I can't tell you how many times I alluded to the fact that Cleveland State had 6 seniors on that team. 6 seniors. And to me, even with a coaching change, to me, you couldn't convince me that there was no reason why Cleveland State couldn't do something with 6 seniors. It took them until the conference tournament to do it, but they did. And so, but then it actually comes back to then the other part of that is it comes to me back to the kind of what John mentioned, the turnover. This year, not transfers, thank God. This year was mostly graduates, senior graduates. They got all of them. And what they got back, though, was, first of all, they already have 2 established starters already as freshmen, Steph Kenich and Tyree Appleby, which was, Kenich came out of absolutely nowhere and was able to come in and get a start on the roster. And he didn't even, and it should be noted that Steph Kenich wasn't even with the team over the summer. He was with his national team, international team. So he wasn't even with the team that summer. And then you also have Tyree Appleby as well. And then you also add in kind of the, Cash Thomas, who was, who's probably one of the best, who's probably going to be one of the best 6 men in the conference. And then, and Dontel Highsmith, he's going to be back as well. So, and then you add in all of these new guys. Now, the question is, does that affect, how does that affect the team? And I'm thinking, I think it's now entirely, I think it's entirely Dennis Felton's. There is no Gary Waters footprint on this team at all anymore. So, and as I've said numerous times, keep beating this down into the ground, but the best gift Gary Waters gave Dennis Felton is, roster flexibility. So, he was able to turn around that roster within 2 years. And I think some of the guys that are coming in, because Al Eichelberger is coming in from DePaul, he's been with the team for a year. He had to sit down for the red shirt. I think he's going to be good. And I think because of that, because of the way that Felton did kind of focus his team and get that all, he was able to kind of, focus on this whole idea of positionless basketball. I know you mentioned that a million times, and I'm sure you've all heard it. And I've heard it now. It's funny because I hear it in the NBA now. I'm like, I heard that first from Dennis Felton, but I think the way he's approached it is probably way different than any other team, any other coach would have. With that said, I guess now I get to pose this to all of you. Shifting gears, since since we don't have anybody from Youngstown State, what do you guys think of year two of the Jared Calhoun era? I think what is your assessment of where they are and where they're going to be in the league?
Well, his style is about what I expected, Bob. I mean, you look at Youngstown State. I mean, they scored a lot, but they had one of the worst defenses in all of Division I. So you pretty much got what we expected. I mean, they run up and down the floor, but they also let other teams run up and down the floor. So as far as his recruiting, I mean, I haven't followed him real closely, but it sounds like he's bringing some players in there. So, and he's a young coach. You know, he seems to be pretty good coach and recruiter. So I guess you're still waiting to see if you're a Youngstown State fan, I think.
Gotcha. So what are the other? Yeah. So one of the things that kind of struck me is the fact that not only did he bring his own and maybe that's, I guess my concern is that he brought in a bunch of his own guys, just like at Cleveland State where you have roster turnover. You saw a bunch of it in Youngstown State too. A lot of it involving some of his top scorers. And, is that going to be an issue for him?
I personally think Youngstown, same old Youngstown. We're looking at probably the last place team in the league. I think take a look at how much difficulty you had to get a Youngstown fan on this particular podcast today. There's total apathy amongst the fan base still, despite a little pickup of attendance last year, and they had a ton of turnover. Not only losing their experienced guys, but then also losing some of the other guys that were on the team. I think it's going to be another year looking up at the rest of the league with a few nice wins along the way, which Youngstown's always been able to do.
To be fair, I think I actually did come to the conclusion. I think the reason we haven't been able to get on Youngstown State, Youngstown State fans is because we've been crapping all over them for the last year, and they think we're assholes. I think that might be it. Maybe not in this. Shying away from this, but so anybody else kind of had are thinking about what where they are, because this kind of, and for me, and I'll probably talk about this a little later on, I need Youngstown State to be good. As a Cleveland State fan, I need Youngstown State to be good. I need them to be good for reasons, of course, I'll explain later.
I can tell you as an Oakland fan, you get used to your rival being terrible.
We'll actually talk about rivalries here in a minute. Since you talked about rivalries being terrible, and of course, somewhere at some point in time, and somewhere in the general vicinity of the world, I'm sure Carrick Jones is floating around. But Detroit, unfortunately, he's not here to defend Detroit, so let's talk about him.
I love talking about them.
I know you do. And by the way, Jim, to your point, in spite of, I do think that Detroit does remain to be the bottom of the league. I mean, they lost. It took too damn long to get their coach. They've been scrambling to get new players because everybody transferred out. I mean, not like it made a difference. They were in last place last year. So what the hell was it? What's the hell the difference between last year's players and this year's players? It's gonna be a tough year for Mike Davis this year. Gonna be, without doubt.
It might be a tough year this year, but I love the Mike Davis hire. I'm just totally floored that they could get a guy like that to come to Detroit.
Steal.
Yeah, just amazing.
Yeah, to come.
I personally think he's the best coach in the league.
Yeah, to come out of the process that late with the guy of, Mike Davis's caliber, it's mind blowing that they ended up with him. I think it's going to be fantastic there.
And as much as I love to rip on Mercy, I think the Mike Davis hire was an absolute home run. It's too bad for them that took way too long. But here's the thing. Mike Davis is a good coach. We all know that. But at the same time, he can't be anything that great. He's been since Indiana, he's been at UAB and Texas Southern. It's not like they stole this dude from Duke. He's a good coach. He's easily the best coach they could have hired at the time. I'm not saying anything other than that. But it's not as earth-shattering as I think other people are making out to be.
He is the only coach in the league with a Final Four appearance, so it's hard not to make it earth-shattering from my perspective. And he did well at UAB.
From a standpoint of, I mean,
we're talking 20 years ago.
Yeah, and what has he done? I think where he was at Texas Southern, which was let's face it, not a was a situation where it is he turned around that and became I understand how easy it is to it's the SWAC. So what's that? Why that's Stone Cold's music. My God, Jimmy, is that you?
Someone give me a fucking Steve Weiser.
Damn it, Jimmy.
What? Hello.
I was in the middle of my Mike Davis thing and you messed me up, you bastard.
I'm just here to drop stunners and take people out.
Here's a stunner. Mercy is not very good.
I lost my train of thought. Thanks, guys. Yeah, and by the way, interestingly enough, Jimmy, your intro is actually going to be where we close out the first episode. Congratulations for jumping in when you did.
Yeah, I think of me as like that. Think of my entrance as like the end credit scene of a Marvel movie. I'm here to tell Iron Man that he's part of a bigger world. He just doesn't know it yet.
Nice.
Great. So are you considering yourself the Nick Fury of the Horizon League now? Is that what your deal is?
With 2 eyes.
With 2 eyes.
Captain Marvel Nick Fury.
Oh Jesus.
That's where I'm coming from. Yes.
Good to know. And like the Thanos that I will be, I'm just gonna snap my fingers and close this episode out. So all right, so this is going to be the end of the first episode of the of our fall fan episode, and so as always, you can catch us on. You can actually listen to our episodes on sportshacks.com and hax.com, and you can also find us wherever you find podcasts. So. Be on the lookout and stay tuned. We're gonna have the second episode of this here coming up real soon.
Or just listen for the broken glass, man.
Or how about no?
To drop stunners on everybody.
Oh my God,
happening.
We're gonna get killed for copyright violations. Stop it, dude. All right.